The year is 2029. You're accused of murdering your wife. The judge isn't human. It's an artificial intelligence that analyzes evidence, evaluates testimony, and renders verdicts with mathematical precision. No jury of your peers, no appeals to emotion, no unconscious biases about your race, class, or appearance, just data, algorithms, and a decision that determines whether you spend the rest of your life in prison. This is the premise of Mercy, starring Chris Pratt as a man who must prove his innocence to an AI judge played by Rebecca Ferguson. The film imagines a near-future justice system that's eliminated human error by eliminating humans. It sounds efficient. It sounds fair. It's also a technical and philosophical nightmare that reveals everything wrong with how we think about artificial intelligence. The first thing everyone assumes about AI judges, they'd be unbiased. No racism, no sexism, no prejudice based on appearance or accent. This assumption is catastrophically wrong. AI systems learn from data. If that data contains historical biases, the AI learns those biases. It doesn't matter that the AI isn't consciously racist. It produces racist outcomes because it was trained on a racist dataset. This isn't hypothetical. It's already happened. COMPAS is an algorithm used in American courts to predict recidivism, the likelihood that a defendant will commit future crimes. A 2016 investigation by ProPublica found that COMPAS was twice as likely to falsely flag black defendants as future criminals compared to white defendants. The algorithm didn't know it was being racist. It just reproduced patterns in historical arrest data, which reflected decades of discriminatory policing. Amazon built an AI hiring tool that systematically downgraded resumes from women. The algorithm learned from historical hiring data, which showed men being hired more often, and concluded that male candidates were preferable. Amazon scrapped the project. An AI judge trained on historical conviction data would learn that certain demographics are convicted more often. It would then apply that pattern to new cases, perpetuating the exact biases it was supposed to eliminate. Mercy's premise assumes AI judges would be fair. The reality, AI judges would formalize unfairness into mathematical certainty. Here's something most people don't realize about modern AI. We often don't know how it makes decisions. Deep learning systems, the neural networks behind most impressive AI capabilities, are notoriously opaque. They process millions of parameters through complex mathematical transformations. The output emerges from interactions we can't trace or explain. This is called the black box problem. The AI gives you an answer. It can't tell you why. In Mercy's scenario, the AI judge declares you guilty. You ask why. The AI cites evidence, fingerprints, testimony, forensic analysis. But how did it weigh that evidence? Why did it believe one witness over another? What made the difference between reasonable doubt and conviction? The AI can't explain. Its decision emerged from mathematical operations that don't translate into human reasoning. You're going to prison, and neither you nor anyone else truly understands why. This violates fundamental principles of justice. Due process requires that defendants understand the case against them. You have the right to confront your accusers, challenge evidence, and argue for your innocence. How do you challenge a decision process that can't be explained? Real courts have already struggled with this. Defendants have challenged algorithmic risk assessments, demanding to know how scores were calculated. Courts have sometimes ruled that defendants have no right to examine proprietary algorithms. The AI's reasoning is a trade secret. Imagine extending this to conviction itself. Guilty by algorithm. No explanation available. Drop a comment. Would you accept an AI verdict if it couldn't explain its reasoning? Human judges understand context. They recognize when circumstances are unusual, when standard rules might not apply, when justice requires interpretation rather than on calculation. AI systems struggle profoundly with context. Consider a self-defense case. The defendant killed an attacker who was threatening their family. The killing is undisputed. The only question is justification. A human judge evaluates fear, proportionality, available alternatives. They imagine themselves in the defendant's position. They apply empathy alongside law. How does an AI evaluate fear? It doesn't experience fear. It can't imagine what it feels like to believe your children are about to die. It can process data about the situation, weapon presence, threat proximity, escalation timeline. But it can't understand what those data points meant to a terrified human being. AI systems also fail on edge cases, situations that don't match training patterns. Suppose you're accused of a crime that's never happened before. A new type of fraud enabled by technology that didn't exist when the AI was trained. The AI has no historical pattern to match. It has to extrapolate from dissimilar cases. Its confidence in the verdict might be high, but its actual accuracy might be terrible. Human judges can reason from principles. They can ask, what does justice require here? And construct novel analyses. AI systems can only interpolate between training examples. Novel situations expose their limitations. Here's something the cybersecurity community understands that legal theorists often don't. AI systems can be deliberately fooled. Adversarial examples are inputs crafted to manipulate AI decisions. A tiny modification to an image, invisible to humans, can make an AI misclassify it completely. Researchers have fooled self-driving cars, facial recognition systems, and content moderation AI using these techniques. An AI judge creates enormous incentives for adversarial manipulation. Wealthy defendants could hire specialists to craft evidence presentations that exploit the AI's weaknesses. They could discover which patterns trigger reasonable doubt and manufacture those patterns. They could test the AI's responses through proxies and optimize their defense accordingly. Meanwhile, poor defendants without access to AI expertise would face the system as is. The wealth gap in legal representation would become a technology gap in AI manipulation. Justice would favor those who could afford to game the algorithm. This is already happening in simpler domains. Search engine optimization games, Google's algorithms, social media manipulation games, recommendation systems. Any AI system with high stakes becomes a target for gaming. An AI judge would be the highest stakes AI system ever deployed. The gaming would be relentless. When a human judge makes a mistake, we can hold them accountable. They can be reversed on appeal. They can be removed from the bench. They can face consequences for corruption or incompetence. Who's accountable when an AI judge errs? The programmers who wrote the code? They'll argue the AI was properly designed. The error was in the data or the application. The administrators who deployed the system? They'll argue they followed best practices. The government that authorized AI judges? They'll argue the legislature made the policy decision. Accountability diffuses through layers of abstraction until nobody is responsible. This isn't unique to AI judges. It's a general problem with automated systems. When Boeing's MCAS system crashed 2 planes, responsibilities scattered across engineers, managers, regulators, and executives. No single person made the decision to kill 346 people. The system killed them. An AI judge that wrongly convicts innocent defendants would distribute responsibility the same way. Everyone would point at everyone else. The AI itself has no moral agency. You can't punish software. The victims would have no target for their grievance. Justice requires that someone be accountable for injustice. AI systems corrode accountability by removing identifiable decision-makers. Mercy positions Chris Pratt's character as someone who must convince an AI of his innocence. This creates several potential dramatic tensions. Can you persuade something that doesn't feel empathy? Human defendants can appeal to jurors' emotions, demonstrate remorse, establish character. AI doesn't care about remorse. It cares about evidence. The persuasion strategies that work on humans might fail completely on AI. Can you understand your own accuser? If the AI's reasoning is opaque, how do you construct a defense? You're arguing against a conclusion without knowing how that conclusion was reached. Can you trust a verdict that might be manipulated? If adversarial inputs can fool the AI, how do you know your conviction wasn't engineered by someone who understood the system's weaknesses? These tensions could make for compelling drama. They also reflect real debates happening now about AI deployment in consequential domains. The film is directed by an unknown, to me, creative team, but the Minority Report comparisons are inevitable. That film explored pre-crime, punishing people for crimes they haven't committed yet. Mercy explores conviction, determining guilt through inhuman reasoning. Both question whether justice can be automated. Mercy is set in 2029, 3 years from now. That's far too soon for AI judges. Current AI systems can't reliably determine truth from lies. They can't evaluate witness credibility. They can't weigh competing evidence with appropriate uncertainty. They can't explain their reasoning in ways that satisfy due process requirements. These limitations won't be solved by 2029. They might not be solved by 2049. The problems are fundamental, not just technical. They require advances in AI interpretability, robustness, and reasoning that don't have clear paths forward. More importantly, the legal and political barriers would take decades to overcome. Constitutional challenges would reach the Supreme Court. Legislatures would debate for years. Implementation would require rebuilding entire court systems. Mercy's 2029 setting is dramatic license, not prediction. The film is asking what-if questions about a scenario that's nowhere close to reality. But what-if questions matter. They help us think through implications before technology arrives. Mercy might be set too early, but the questions it raises will become increasingly urgent as AI capabilities advance. Mercy imagines an AI judge determining guilt with mathematical precision. The premise sounds efficient and unbiased. The reality would be different. AI systems reproduce biases from training data. They can't explain their reasoning. They struggle with context and edge cases. They can be adversarially manipulated. They diffuse accountability until nobody is responsible for errors. An AI judge wouldn't eliminate human flaws from justice. It would encode those flaws in software and apply them at scale, with less transparency and less accountability than human judges provide. Chris Pratt's character faces this system alone. His struggle to prove innocence to something that doesn't understand innocence, that only understands patterns in data, captures the horror of automated judgment. Subscribe for the breakdown after release. I'll tell you what the film gets right about AI limitations and where it takes creative liberties. Tell me in the comments, would you trust an AI to determine your fate? Why or why not?